Yeah. So basically, that's the essence. So the essence is to expose us to some of these technical jargons, and also give us those insights we need. So I mean, if you're new to SAP, you're not scared when these requirements come in, or you probably would have heard about it. You know how to go about it, and of course, you probably learn one or two things from this session, as we move forward. So basically, who am I? I'll just simply say an SAP consultant, basically focusing on the finance space. And I've actually done a lot of end-to-end projects in the SAP environment, especially I've done with S4, private cloud, RISE, basically. And we're still on it. We're still learning, right? It's a journey. I always say the SAP career is a long journey, and um, for those who are new, for those who are old, for those who are somewhere in the middle, I hope we are enjoying this journey. And of course, the journey would require us to keep learning. So that's why most of us have joined now. I'll give us a chance to just introduce ourselves, basically, briefly, and we'll take it up from there. Yeah, so it's very important I get to hear your voices. So I'm going to start according to how our names are. Just tell us your name and where you're joining from. That'll be all. So at this 20, 30 seconds is fine. So the first here is Ayadi. Ayadi, you can unmute and just tell us, your name and where you're from, and if possible, what you currently do. Thank you. Okay. Ayadi is here to unmute. I have Polat. Polat, are you there?
Hello,
Hi.
I'm here.
Okay, so just your name and where you're calling from and what you do.
Hello, I
Just
am a software engineer from Turkey.
okay, great.
We have in a SAP project now, and I am interested in your presentation. Just because of that, I want
Yeah.
to participate.
All right. Thank you very much for
Thank
that.
you.
I appreciate that. Hi, Kelechi.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Kelechi from Canada. Um, been into SAP space for some time. Even though I switched a bit with another ERP, but SAP still remains my interest for now. Happy to be part of this training. Thank
Uh,
you.
Thank you, Kelechi. Hi, Marvin.
Hi, Kalichi. Mervin Manning. I'm SAP functional consultant on 2 SAP projects right now.
Great, great, great. Thank you, Marvin. Hi, Mike. Are you there? Okay. Would go to Lekan. Olami Olami Lekan. Are you there? Sorry if I murdered your name. Lekan, can you hear me? Okay. Patience, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good
Hi,
evening.
Patience. Good
Yeah,
evening.
my name is Patience, and I'm SAP consultant in sales distribution. I currently live in Germany, and I'm also in a project at the moment.
All right. Thank you very much, Patience. It's good to have you back. Pen. Hi, Pen.
Yes, my name is Ben. I'm from Douala, Cameroon. I'm a chartered accountant. I've been in SAP space as an operational guy for quite some time, and I'm looking to switch as a consultant.
Great, great. Good to have you. Hi, Steven.
Hi, Kelechi. Hi, everyone. My name is Steve. I'm new to the SAP space I'm joining this training from Canada.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yes. Thank you
welcome.
very much, everyone. It's good to hear from all of you. So let's basically go into why let's continue from the session. Yeah, so let's see what we'll basically be getting out from this course. And like I said, this would be a 6 4 to 6 weekend course. I mean, it could get to 8 depending on how fast we are with running through with the session. So we'd hope to look at just basic ABAP. Like, I mean, it's necessary that, I mean, there's no two ways about it. As a functional guy, you need to understand some basic technical jargons, and you get that a lot when you join projects. And we're going to be looking at some of the new functionalities in S4. We'll look at the ABAP environment. These are basically for functional knowledge. We're not going to be teaching ABAP or anything technical. So the course has been very well sorted out to meet with the functional requirement. Basically what you're going to be doing if you find yourself in any project. We're going to be navigating the S4 tables and fields. We're going to be checking authorizations. We'll look at the Fiori apps, troubleshooting. How do you, when you start encountering errors, especially during support, where do you start from? We'll look at data migration. We'll look at the transporting, customizing objects. If you're done with your configurations, how do you move them from one client to another? And so what are the requirements? We'll look at SAP system control. We'll look at ALE, IDOC, and EDI for third-party applications, moving information from, let's say, Workday to SAP, or within the SAP family ECC to S4. Then we'll look at functional specification document, very, very important for the functional guy, because once you do your fit to gap workshops, and sorry guys, and you're able to identify those gaps, it's very, very important that you would analyze those gaps. And to do that, you have to go to your RICEFs. Very, very important. So and we're going to be looking at running jobs in SAP, background jobs. So basically, there are some outside recurring programs. There are some functions you might need to that might have to happen regularly. So you have to set up jobs. Then, if we still have time, we'll look at things around validation, substitutions, some of these basic things. But for now, this is what we hope to achieve, and let's see how far we can go with this. But basically, as a functional guy, these are very, very important key information or key skills that would be expected of you as you move up from being probably an analyst or a support consultant to being in projects. Once you are involved from the initial stages of your project, from the discovery phase, or you're part of the explore, realize phases, there is no doubt about it that this set of skills are very, very, very important. So understanding them would probably see you moving up from being a functional guy to probably managing project. Then you start looking at architects, you start looking at subject matter experts, you keep climbing. Yeah, so for me, these are well selected based on experience and based on exposure. And there are still more technical content which I don't hope to go into fully, but these are very, very important skill sets. So let's say, for example, if you have gone through a typical S4 training, or if you're new to SAP and you've gone through a training, the fact is you're not going to be learning these things because they're a little bit technical for you. So it's expected that when you understand your basic configurations, then you can now start looking at some other functionalities. And these are some of the things you would actually be looking at, as you progress in your career. So some of the things we're going to be, if you're going to be part of this session, we expect everybody to be respectful, treat everybody with respect, hold yourself and each other accountable, follow up with what is next, and participate fully. So we hope that we'll have a very good session, and why not, we could connect with each other through our social medias, LinkedIn, which is probably one of the best in terms of career and connections. Yeah, so we are consultants already, so there are some basic things I might just skip, but just for those also who are also new to the space, I've actually tried to balance that so we don't make it too formal. So we have to also carry those who are still new in this space, somehow. So just create that balance. Yeah. So SAP basically is systems, application, and products. In case you have forgotten or in case you're new. So basically, when we look at SAP products and people, so this is actually looking at a map of everything you probably find in the SAP space, right? So for the configuration team, you most likely be having the analyst, you most likely be having manuals, you'd have configuration menus, you have implementation guides. So these are core what I would say requirements, for the SAP product, for the configuration team. And of course, for the business end users, understanding the application, the core functionalities, understanding your end-to-end business processes, which is tied to the configuration team, because the configuration team will need to set the system up for the end users to be able to use. And we have the development environment, which is most likely managed by the development team. Yeah, so we have those within the technical space, those in the BASIS, ABAP, and BPT, and the rest of them, those who make sure that the system is basically ready, right? Then we have the operational staff within the SAP products and people, the system, the database, the hardware, and all of that. So basically, if you look at a whole SAP project, you're going to be having this product and this set of people within that team, basically. So this is just looking at what composes, a typical SAP environment or product. Now, there's something we're going to do, and it's very important that for those who are also not so familiar with the SAP environment, we need to do a sample, check out how these skill requirements, the ones I've listed, if we probably pick a sample of a job description, let's see if these skill sets are, if it's how relevant it is, if you would need them, or are we just playing? Yeah, so we're just going to do a run through. We're just going to do a sample, go into LinkedIn, search for a role, and see these requirements as per. As for the functional guy, these technical requirements that you would most likely see in a job interview or in a job description, and how relevant this training actually is to you. So what we're going to do, just a minute, we're just going to go to LinkedIn. I hope you guys can hear me. So I'll check.
Yes, we
Anybody, can you? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to basically just search, and you can see my screen, right? I believe so. Okay. So I'm just going to search, let's say, for example, SAP FI, CEO, or any other consultant for a matter, MMSD, whichever functional space you're in. So I will check, this is a job. Let me go to jobs. So this is the job here. So you're seeing an FICO consultant. Let's just check the requirements. Okay, this is quite simple. Okay, so let me see something here. Okay, so this is also for finance, and let me check down. Okay, so you have implementation, you have core processes. This is also very This is good. Hopefully enough for those who are still very fresh. So we will most likely be seeing senior finance roles. Okay, so let's see this. Okay, so we have candidate must demonstrate past project experiences, solid command of FICO processes. Okay, fair. So let me do something a little bit. Let me look for senior roles and let me get this in the UK because I know we have some. Okay, so if you probably pick a senior role, yeah, you most likely be seeing things around leading teams to design, build, and test and execute solutions, managing project financial budgets, developing project strategies, managing and delivering large projects, developing and managing strong relationship with stakeholders. Let me check this. There's something okay. So basically, what I'm trying to do is to show you some of that. These are very, very important requirements. So you can see here, this basically speaks to business analysis, identify stakeholders, ensure process selection and deployment, upgrading and maintaining. We also have, let's see some of the key responsibilities. Okay, work with the architect, operates. Okay, this is good. Just a minute, let me check the last one. Okay. So we're going to see, so we have here know-how of various SAP implementation methodologies. This will speak to the activate. Having implementation experience and sound knowledge of EDI interfaces can drive end-to-end mapping and solution as a solution architect. So you can see sound knowledge of EDI. So if you check here, for example, you're going to see that one of the technical skill sets here is SAP ALE, IDOC, and EDI. Then we have initiate major enhancements and new developments you would find in functional specifications, which is this. So you would see some requirements where they would say, okay, this is testing, most of this you would probably do during the explore phases, and you have tools for that. So this is me just trying to show you some of the key responsibilities and why. So you have this more communicate, workshops, configuration, functional specifications, testing, hypercare, which of course hypercare also involves troubleshooting, and you can see the basic pay for this kind of rules. So if you're moving, here you can see this includes transformation, S/4HANA upgrades and migrations. So if you come here, you're going to see data migration. Of course, that will also involve transporting. Yeah. So the idea is that you can see that most of the lead roles, so if you're going to migrate from the consultant to a lead role, you will most likely be doing a little bit more technical stuff other than, depending on the module you're working on, the regular functional, activities, basic configurations. Then when you go live, you support the users. And although, of course, some consultants don't write functional specs, functional specs is also a very, very important part of, the process. Yeah. So the essence of this is just to show you that if you go to the market and you check job descriptions, These are very, very important requirements, skill requirements. And for those who are already in projects, of course, you're going to be seeing them. You're sure it's a 100% assurance that you would need most of this skill set as you move along. So please just give me 2 minutes. I'm just going to grab a cup of water and get back to you. Just 2 minutes. Thank you. Yeah, okay, I'm back. Okay. Now, starting our journey, it's very, very important that, because one of the things that we'll most likely experience in the SAP space is the introduction of S4. It's very, very important we look at some of the changes. Yeah, so if you're a consultant and you are doing conversion projects or you're new to SAP, one of the very, very important thing now in the industry is the migration from ECC to S4. And one thing I've actually tried to do in this session is to let us know some of the new functionalities. You might have seen some of them. For those of you who are already in the S4 environment, for those who are joining, who are new, it's also good to explain some of these changes. So if you are still on the ECC platform, these changes will probably help you know the new environment you're coming to. Yeah, so basically, as we know, S4 currently has lots of products. We have RISE, we have private cloud, we have public cloud, and a whole lot more. Yeah, so one thing about the environment is that it keeps changing. There's always new products and new services. Yeah, and it's important as a consultant, you follow through, you're constantly upskilling and constantly gaining more insights into the new services that SAP is offering. Yeah, and of course, the first release of S4 came in 2015. And of course, it's been one of the biggest changes, but we have had more changes from S4. We have had, new products and new services like I've explained. However, I always see ECC as a very good foundation for SAP, and of course that big move that happened, but change is constant, and of course SAP has set a deadline. I think it's 20. I don't know. I don't have that 2027 or so. Where is it? Yeah,
2030, I think.
Okay, they have moved it to 2030.
Yes.
Cool. So right now in the world, you have a lot of projects around. You have a lot of brownfield projects where companies are trying to migrate from the earlier versions to the more recent versions, and now they're not just migrating to any versions. So you have projects in the private cloud space, you have projects in the RISE space, you have projects in the public cloud, you have projects in a lot of all these different products that SAP has, right? So it's something you need to know. Of course, those who are already in practice know this, and those who are also coming, it's also a very good information to you, so that when you come into the industry, you also can follow through to know that SAP is a product that constantly changes, that is constantly improving. And if you really want to stay very strong in the industry, learning and continuous improvement is something that must be done, basically. So so I'm not going to bore you with much of the differences, but the most important thing is to note that HANA is the database for it's like it's database where all the applications sit on, where the S4 sits on. Yeah, and of course it's in memory. It's very fast, very adaptive, very flexible. And we had different versions, like I've explained. We have different versions of S4 HANA that's actually coming up. Also, another thing you need to know is the SAP S4 HANA is an abbreviation of Business Suite 4. So when you see S4, it's just saying that is Business Suite 4 of the SAP HANA database. So in case you didn't know what that abbreviation was, basically S4 just means the Business Suite 4 of HANA. And of course, the third thing you need to know is, of course, it's an addition to intelligent ERP functionalities. We have a lot of products within that space, basically. Now, let's look at the change. Yeah, let's look at the specific change that has happened within the system. And it's important that we look at these changes because these changes will also reflect in the technical requirements that we would be seeing. Yeah. So if you're new in the system or you're moving from S4 or you're in projects now, these changes also affects the way you do your design, the way you configure your systems. You have to adapt to whatever new changes we have. So it's everywhere that one of the changes that happened was Fiori. Yeah, if we still have projects within the GUI interface. Yeah, but like you can see here, some of us are still within the GUI space, but we also have Fiori, which is one of the newest, which is one of the, I think, the major transformation between ECC and S4. So you have an interface that is cloud enabled and that's flexible and probably easy to navigate. You don't have to cram all the T codes. Everything looks simpler and easier with Fiori. Yeah, of course, but you still need the GUI to do some configuration. So that is still very much in place. So this is one of the changes that you would observe within the system. Another major change is the ledger structure in finance. Yeah, and also if you're implementing projects, this is very, very important. This is very key. Now, basically, we have parallel ledgers, which are basically used for reporting. Now in S4, we still, of course, the leading ledger is still there, and you still have other kinds of ledgers that you will need to use to do your reporting. We have the extension ledgers, we have the non-leading ledgers, and of course, we have the simulation ledgers, or what we call the prediction ledgers. This would probably help in the prediction accounting solution of SAP. Yeah, so the idea behind ledgers is basically for reporting in other currencies and in other accounting principles. So let's say that you're doing a project in Germany. The German law has requirements for reporting, and you are rolling out to another country in the US. The US, in the financial space, US uses GAAP. Germany can use probably another financial reporting format. So the idea of parallel reporting is to be able to report financials, in this different currencies and different accounting principles, such that you still keep the information intact, but you report based on what the legal requirements are for each of these countries. And when you need to consolidate, you can actually consolidate probably in the group currency or in the head office accounting principle, the accounting principle the head office is using. So the idea is just to give that flexibility in reporting in terms of the parallel ledgers, in terms of the accounting principles, and in terms of the currencies that you're going to be using. So it's one of the changes that we have actually seen within the S4 space. And of course, data structure, it's key. In fact, this is also a very important part, and that is why this is one of the core of this course. Yeah, a lot of tables and fields were removed. Yeah, and the idea is to have calculation on the fly. Yeah, so things like the index tables, the aggregate tables, are no longer part of the core. They are still there. Yeah, but of course we have the new baby or the new champion of ledgers, which is BKPF and AC Docker, which is the single source of truth, and the universal ledgers that have come. Yeah, so you need to know these fields, because as a functional guy, you would not most likely, you will interface with these fields, but we will go in deep into them, as we progress. But you need to know that if you are in ECC, there are some fields or tables or that have actually they are no longer in use, or you have better options on how to use them, and you need to know them. And you need to also, that would help you when you're also discussing technicalities with the technical team. So you don't give them a table that have expired. Yeah. And as we go on, you're going to see, that you're going to get to use some of these tables and how this fits into the structure. Another change we would have seen is in the posting periods. Yeah. We have the controlling area level part of your posting periods. So that is actually used for to open and close posting periods for controlling in finance. And it's also a very, very good change. It's also a very good functionality. So you can, if you're in the CEO space, you can open and close just like you open and close period for MM. You can actually do an open and close your posting periods for CEO transactions, and of course other functionalities. Of course, the COPA space also saw a very huge change. For those in the finance space, the profitability analysis. So in the previous, in ECC, you do not need to activate the account-based profitability, but in S4, you have to activate that. Yeah. Though you still can use the costing-based COPA in parallel, but you have to activate account-based profitability if you want to use profitability analysis as part of your modules. Yeah, so this is just information, very, very important for those who are new or those who are actually going to be doing projects in this space. The universal ledger was introduced. We call it the single source of truth. Yeah, it's the main function, basically used to analyze the major impact of the S/4HANA finance table architecture. So this is big. Yeah, and instead of having multiple tables doing a whole lot of work, and of course getting information from each of these tables took a lot of time and resource. We have one table that gives you a holistic view about everything you have been doing. So somebody would ask, of course, those who are also new to S4 will ask, when I post a transaction, where do all these transactions go to? Where do they sit? Outside just when you call up a report, you see them. Where do they, how does the system call up? How does the system, where do all the information sit? And when you trigger a report, how does the system pick all those information and give you a display? Yeah, so when you run a report, the system just goes to the tables and fields, arrange those information based on the report you have triggered and displays to you. But you should understand that behind that report, there are structures, there's an architecture at the back end where these transactions were sitting before you triggered them to display in form of a report. And that's the essence of understanding the structure. because when you understand the structure, doing things like functional specification, troubleshooting, it's a little bit easier when you understand where these informations are sitting and how they are sitting and in which field or which table or which area they are sitting. Yeah, and of course, the Universal Journal is very, very key. And whether you are in finance or whether you're in any module, this is very important information that for finance, especially when you post a transaction, as long as it has finance impact, you will most likely find that information in the Universal Journal. And of course, the T code, when the table we table for that is what we call ACDOCA. That's the table that will spool out those reports. But we're going to learn how to use those tables and those fields. That's the essence of this course. So I won't bore you a lot with the technicalities, but you can see how everything has how the transformation has happened. From ECC Classic, we had these different ledgers individually. We moved to the new ledger structure where we had the FegoFlexT and the document splitting. Now in the Universal Ledger, everything has come under one platform. So you don't have different tables doing different things. You have one table that has all the information that you're looking for, and it has made reporting very, very, very easy. So these are just some of the few changes. Now, part of the things you will learn is how to access tables, but we're not going to be accessing tables now. But the T code for you to get into any table and get the information you're looking for is called XE16N, and it's called what we call the data browser. Yeah. So if you want to see all the information that you have been, when you post a transaction, where it goes to, how that data is arranged, and get out all the information you need, including the table details, you most likely need to be using your data browser. And your data browser, the T code is XE16N. So we're going to go fully into this. This is just me explaining the Universal Journal. And we have another T code we call SE11, where we're going to see the data table structure and the definitions and all that. So the idea is that if you're going to be speaking to the technical team, whether you're coming up with an FSD or you're troubleshooting or you're doing anything and it involves the technical team, you're not going to be speaking English to them. You'll most likely be giving them information that are technical. Yeah, you're not going to be giving them your functional information, like give them the GL name or the GL number or the sales order number and all that. No. What you're going to be giving them are technical information, and you can find those information. So one of the things we're going to learn is, how do I get those informations that I need to give the technical team? How do I source them? And if there is an error, for example, how do I troubleshoot? And a whole lot more. How do I transport it if I'm done with the configs? How do I move it? And basically some other, if there are third-party applications, how do I set up the EDIs, the APIs, and all that? Yeah. So, but the idea is looking at these different changes and the very, very important table. And we're going to be running these T codes and understanding the structures. So we have basically talked about the ACDOCA table. It's the Universal Journal. And if you're in finance and of course other modules, this is the end. Yeah. If you want to see all the transactions, everything you are posting that has financial impact, your table is ACDOCA. And you can see, for example, though we are going to be logging into the system, seeing this for real, you're going to see all the documents. What you have here is the ledgers, the company code, the year, all the document numbers. So nothing is missing. Yeah, even when you reverse and you delete and all that, everything sits on the table. Yeah, and understanding the technicalities is very, very important. Like I've said, you won't be given, for example, I want to give the technical guy, let's say the company code. I will not tell him the company code is XYZ1. No, you have to look for the technical name of the company code and give to him and reference it to your actual company code. So these are just an example of while the functional consultant really needs to understand the architecture and needs to understand the tables and the fields. Okay, we have looked at another change happened between FI and CEO, the integration. Yeah, so in the finance part, CEO and FI is the integration happens at the chart of accounts level. They are no longer separated. Yeah, so from the chart of accounts, you can easily process, create your CEO related documents, and all that. So the primary cost elements and especially the primary cost elements have been integrated in the chart of account space. Yeah, and all these was, this would basically just help reporting, and give us that single view of, all that has been happening, within the system. Of course, we all know that, or another change that most likely that happened is, of course, the structure of business partner. In ECC, we have, the FK01, FD01, create master data, quite easy and, straight, especially in the config, but it's a requirement in S4 that the concept, you have to integrate your master data with the business partner functionality. And of course, the T codes and all that have changed. You can use your BP to create your master data, but in terms of configuration, you have to integrate your customer and vendor master data to the BP configuration. And we did all that when we did the end-to-end configuration class. Yeah, but this is just me trying to refresh our minds for those who are also new to see these changes. So if you are in a project, if you're in a brownfield project or a conversion project, or which is most likely what is very much in the space right now, people are moving from ECC to S4. These changes are very, very important. Knowing these changes are very, very important, especially if you're going to be doing design and configuration. Those things, knowing these changes will also help you to manage your configs. And of course, the process, basically, if you look at the ECC customer and the S4 customer, basically the difference is the integration between the the master data to the business partner, and that's key, in S4. In ECC, once you set up once you configure the master data, assign your number ranges, you're good to go. You can just start creating customers. But in S4 now, you have to do that and also integrate that to the business partner functionality. Okay, we have talked about that, and of course, we have said that some T codes, even in the customer master data, has actually left. So if you want to create, you just go to your BP and you can create your customer master data. And of course, the general data, the company code data, the sales area data, or purchase area data are still very much, existing. But for me, it was a good change, and I enjoyed the environment when I used them. For line item reports, we'll also know that some old reports are still existing, but some have actually left. The popular FBL1, FBL5N, and some T codes, in ECC should have left, and we also have some new T codes in S4. So basically just letting you know some of these key changes. We have the credit management, FSCM, which replaces the ARO, credit management transactions. Yeah. So some people would most likely funds management and all that. It's a new functionality. So of course, if you run some T codes, it will pop out some error to also let you know that some of these functionalities are no longer existing. Yeah. So FSCM has replaced the previous ARO credit management transactions. Material ledger, very, very important. this is basically used in the costing, CO, and the MM space. Yeah, so the functionality helps you to calculate actual cost of materials and provides, parallel ledger evaluations and all that. So this is actually very new. In S4, in S4 is mandatory, yeah, and that's why if you have not activated that, when we use the test, the sandboxes, the system keeps it's throwing up that error that you need to activate your material ledger. Yeah, so you have to activate that, and somehow the extension feeds into the ACDOCAD table. You'll find that in the ACDOCAD table for the material ledgers. Yeah, of course, we have the migration workbench. We know that for those who are migrating, who are going to be doing migrations, depending on your role in your project, LSMW has been, is there, but no longer not advised to be used. Also, LTMC has also been deprecated or removed. Yeah, you no longer from SAP S/4HANA 2020. It was removed in 2021, so we no longer have LTMC. What we have is migrate your data, and you can only do that through the Fiori Launchpad. Yeah, so these are changes, updates that have happened over time. So if you want to migrate data now, you can only do that through the Fiori app, and the app is migrate your data. So this is just probably making the Fiori app a little bit more important, right? Since you can no longer run that in the GUI. So what we have now for data migration is you can only do that in Fiori, especially if you're within the SAP S/4HANA 2020 to 2021 version upwards. And that's what we use now to do data migration. Of course, asset accounting, there were major changes within the asset accounting space, the technical clearing accounts, the addition of accounting principles in the depreciation areas, and a whole lot more changes. Yeah, so asset accounting was was well hit with the change from ECC to S4, and it's also important we take note of that. Yeah, for currencies, we have more currencies now in S4. You can have up to, I think, 5 currencies, free currencies you can choose. I think in ECC we had only 3. Yeah, outside the major currencies, you can have free currencies you can add. So that is also another change that has happened within the space. So you can, I won't go deep into, defining your currency types. That's the business for the finance consultants. Also the ledger structure, which we have talked about. We have 3 key ledgers now, and you must have at least 2 for you to actually do any configuration in S4. The leading and non-leading ledger. If you need the extension ledger or the appendix ledger, you can actually have that, for more reporting functionalities. But for you to successfully configure, you must have at least 2 of the leading or non-leading ledgers. Okay, so I'll bore you with the configs. Of course, accounting principle is also there. Not so much of a problem, but once you create your ledgers, automatically the ledger groups are created and you can take it up from there. Yeah, so for me, what I just went through was basically the core changes, and it was important since we're going into the technical space. It's important that for those who did not know these changes, you now know that there are some key changes that have happened during the transition. For those who know, it's just a reminder of some of the changes and more that have happened. There's a whole lot more that have actually happened. And for those who are going to be going for interviews, you most likely be asked about these changes, especially for consultants who are still, who are coming up. most interviews, they'll be, if the person interviewing you is very technical, he will most likely ask what are some of the changes that have happened from ECC to S4 if you're going to be part of a brownfield project. Yeah, so you need to know some of these changes so that when you have interview sessions, you can easily, say some of these changes, and probably after this session, get to know them more. Yeah, so where do you fit in, basically, right? After SAP is installed, the analyst or the business, the BAs, work with the functional consultants to, of course, if they're done with the fit to standard documentation, if they have come up with their blueprints, they help with designing the system. Of course, doing configurations. Now, when the configuration does not usually involve programmers. Of course, what they basically do, the BASIS and ABAP team, what their major role during the explore phase is to make sure that the system is ready, the servers are ready. You can the dev system, the different kinds of servers you have are ready for you to do your work. They will only come in when you have done your fit to gap and there are gaps. So most times where you see them again is where you have done your functional specifications and you have identified gaps and you want to implement your RISEFs. Yeah, we're going to look at that a whole lot more. We're going to have a practical session on how to, from scratch, we'll have a scenario from scratch. We're going to go through the process of coming up with an FST. You're going to go into the fields, pick the tables, know how to speak the language the technical guys will understand, and submit your FST. It's very, very important for the functional guy because the BA would most likely help in identifying those gaps, but when those gaps are identified, it's the job of the functional consultant to put it in a document that the technical teams can understand. And that's where you see them. Yeah. And once those gaps are closed, once they have either come up with a customization or a report or just interface and all that, you would identify the right RISEF that is supposed to close those gaps. Not just identify, you will come up with an FSD on how those gaps will be closed. And to do an FSD, you need to understand technical requirements a whole lot. Yeah, from the basic knowledge down to a more technical knowledge. That's a very, very important part of the job of the functional consultant. Very, very key. Nobody's going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. So we'll look at that as we move on. We have done, okay, the next, we'll just have a break in the next 10, 15 minutes. Now let's look at the technical architecture, because for me, I believe that as a functional person, the only way you're going to really appreciate the SAP system is when you understand how it was built and what it was built to do. Yeah, some of us have gone through trainings. We have learned, some of us learned with T-code, some of us learned with going through the configuration screens and all that. But it's not enough. Yeah, as you get more experienced, as you move into the system, as you gain more experience, you want to understand how the system thinks. You want to understand what holds the system together. Yeah, and if you understand how the system is built, that's the beginning of really understanding technical requirements. And you cannot understand how the system is built without going through ABAP. Yeah, and of course, very more recently, we have what we call the ABAP the SAP NetWeaver platform. These are some also good change because S4 does not use the ABAP. It's still existing, but the language has changed in S4. Yeah, the server, the database we use now is HANA, but the language that reads in HANA is what we call the SAP NetWeaver platform. You can see the evolution of how this language has improved. Yeah, but we're not going to go into those details because we are not technical guys, we are functional guys. but it's good to know the language that you are working with. So if you're going to be getting technical information, at least for knowledge sake, you need to know the language it was written with. You need to know the server it's in. Yeah, and you need to know a whole lot more. Yeah, so and I believe that if the functional guy, if the functional consultant will have to grow from being a functional consultant to a lead, then to a technical architect, you need to understand the architecture. It's very, very important. You need to understand the architecture. And that's why the course is important for your growth in the career, in the space in S4. Very, very important. Yeah. So let's look at so ABAP basically stands for the Advanced Business Application Programming, and it's the language developed by SAP for the development of business application in the SAP environment. So any field or any program, any table we're going to be pulling out, when we go to SE38, for example, you're going to see some of those language. But like I said, the essence of this training is not for us to write programs. It's just for us to understand the technicalities, understand the language. Yeah. And of course, when you're doing configurations, especially if you're within the finance space too, you most likely encounter the NetWeaver application. So let me just do something very fast. So we see this. Okay, sorry, this has been open for a while. Just log in. Okay, so if I go to SPRO, for example, and I go to SAP reference ING, which is a configuration screen. Now you see, if you go to ECC, what you would find here is NetWeaver, SAP NetWeaver. But in S4, especially from the 2020 version, what you most likely see here is ABAP platform. So if you check this change, and some of you might have seen it, but you would not have known why it happened like that, especially if you're coming from ECC or a lower version of S4. So this basically explains the platform. So it has basically transformed from ERP, where we had the NetWeaver. NetWeaver was there, the transformation basically happened from the 1809 version of SAP S4HANA. Yeah, so if you check older versions, what you will see here is NetWeaver. But in S4, what you'll see here, S4 from the 1909, what you see here is ABAP platform. And of course, if you check the ABAP platforms, you're going to see basic informations. Of course, if you go to general setting, for example, if you're a functional guy and do most of the configurations, this is where you do most of those, the holiday, the factory calendar, currencies, countries, time zones, and a whole lot. Yeah. There's a whole lot of requirements here. Even for your business partner, you have to do this through the ABAP platform. Yeah. So, I mean, just knowing this is very, very important, because ABAP itself has also been transformed. The language has transformed also from one stage to another. Like I said, this is for knowledge sake. So let's see the evolution. Yeah. It normally was what we call SAP kernel. It was the core component of the SAP system. Yeah. And the development started in 1988, and it went into the R3 version in 1992. It was almost there for 30 years. And one of the important changes that was done in 2002 was the version extension. Yeah, so we had in the kernel, we had introduced web application servers because SAP was foreseeing the web applications. SAP NetWeaver itself because it was kernel and NetWeaver came in. It was released in 2004. NetWeaver stayed for a long time. It's still there, actually. It's still in use for some functionalities. Then in 1809, there was a big change. And of course, this led to the introduction of what we call the SAP ABAP platform, which is the foundation of the S4 HANA system. So the essence of taking you through this is when you see the language, when you see the fields, when you see the tables, when you see the codes, you should actually know the source and how these languages came about. This is the essence, yeah. And why it's technical is because you're going to be working a lot with the ABAP team. They understand these things, but you also need to understand them. If you also want to move from being a functional consultant, if you want to move to the lead roles, to the architect roles, then you need to do it. You need to move from the business side, yeah, and pick more information from the technical side, because it's going to be a requirement, a serious requirement. Yeah, so if they have a third-party application, it's expected that if you're the lead or you're the architect, you have to come up with APIs, you have to come up with EDIs, iDocs that would integrate this platform. So as you move up and as you have more responsibilities, you most likely be going deeper into the technical part of SAP. No two ways about that. Now let's look at the landscape. Yeah. Of course, the landscape is, we have the SAP HANA, which carries the database tables. So when we post transactions, basically it sits on the tables. Yeah, and of course, when you call them up through the ABAP platform, it goes to different kinds of processes. There's a transaction logic that is being pulled out. There's an analytics. There is enterprise search. And when you see it on your interface, when you see it as by a display, yeah, it's of course the Fiori shell. So so if you want to pull out any technical information, you have to go down to the tables. You have to go down to the table, because anything you see in the front, anything you see at the GUI, of course, if you, for example, you want to run a particular T code, when you put the T code, the system is going to go down to the database table and order, and of course, go to the ABAP, the CDS view, and do some search, do some analytics, do some logic, run some programs, and what you see is a function of that split seconds, a lot of things that has happened within the system architecture. Yeah, and if you're going to be speaking to the technical guys, you have to come down to the table level. You have to know your tables, because that is where the system picks the information you would most likely see in your interface. So this is the previous logic that we had. There was just NetWeaver ABAP. It was simpler, but now because of analytics, because of a whole lot more functionality that the system is expected to do, we have these three logics happening. There was just transaction logic in ECC, but now we have both the transaction, analytics, and enterprise search. So this has so the transformation has also affected the architecture, the landscape. Yeah, of course, the ABAP environment we have seen is still the same thing. There is a database that stores all the information. It goes up to the ABAP platform in way of codes and programs. Then it goes up to the user, in terms of the interface or the GUI. Okay, so basically, for us to do technical work, we need to understand ABAP programs. So guys, don't get bored. Like I said, we're not going into these things, right? We're not going to, the essence of this class is not to learn these programs. It's just to know them, yeah? So that we can also speak when this happens. Yeah, so of course, program is made up of codes. A program is like a car. If you have a car, those codes are like the different parts. Yeah, before you see anything happen in the system, it has been coded. Some people have wrote some codes that the system reads, and it gives you a program. Right? So ABAP codes exist in two forms, and we're not going into that details, but for knowledge sake, we have a source code that can be viewed and edited in the ABAP Workbench, which you're going to see. So the ABAP Workbench is where most of these codings happen. And of course, we have the generated code. Yeah, it's familiar to the Java environment and all that. But no worries, no need to fret. These are just basically background information. So let's see the example of programs. So guys, if you have been on a project and depending on your role, there are some transactions that are not, that they are transaction codes basically, but you can't run them. So let me give you an example. Programs cannot be run in this your what do we call this again now? Your transaction screen. So for example, if I want to see let's say an invoice, for example, I can go to FB70. This is what we call transaction codes. Yeah, you can run transaction codes in your GUI interface at the transaction code box. You cannot run that. Programs are meant to be run, with a program platform. We have a T code that you can use to run programs. So when you are in a project or if you're doing your configs, sometimes there will be need for you to run programs to probably refresh the system, do some activations at the back. Just there'll be basically need for you to activate some things. Yeah, I think I remember we're doing an asset configuration. We're asked to run a specific program to update the system so that we can actually run through with that transaction. So programs are used for different purposes. Yeah, and they're always very long most times, and they form the foundation, of your transactions. They are very well tied to the fields. So you can see the list of some kind of programs. Yeah, you will need to, for your module, you need to know the kind of programs you need to run. Most times SAP would recommend those programs when you run into errors. Most times you need to actually know them. So this is an example of what a program is. So you cannot run them like transaction codes. You need to go through the transaction code that is needed for you to run a program. And we're going to see all that. Now, let's now look at some of the ABAP transactions. And after this, we'll probably take a 10 minutes break and we'll take it from there. This class is meant to be, it's 4 to 6. So we'll just do a 5 minutes and we'll return. Just a 2 hours class. Now, for you to understand the technical side, you need to understand the SAP, the ABAP Workbench. There are some very important transaction codes that a functional consultant will need to be familiar with. So if you go to, for example, let me log into my system and just show you where these things are sitting. So yeah. So if you go to, for example, the tools, if you go to tools, you're going to see the ABAP Workbench. So if you are functional, you're in the GUI space, you most likely just be playing around with the functional modules. But if you're technical, if you want to get into the technical module, you need to come to tools. If you go to ABAP Workbench, there are 4 sets of activities. If you go to overview, you're going to see, you start seeing some of the technical transaction codes. If you go to development, you will actually see more. Yeah, so these two are very, very important. I'm going to now tell you the one that a functional consultant will most likely be using, especially if you want to prepare things like FSD, if you want to troubleshoot, if you want to, get more information about certain things. So let me also just show you something, and you see where this ties. So if I go, for example, I go to this transaction code FB70. Let's say as a functional guy, you are running transaction codes, right? And you come to a particular field, let's say this field customer. I just go to F1 on my keyboard. Yeah, and I want to see the program, the table that controls this field. If I go to technical information, you can just see, this is just you can see the program. So I don't want to go fast, but you can see the field, you can see the table, you can see the field, you can see the program for just this guy. So why did I do this? It's just to also let you again understand the structure. Yeah. So for this field customer, you can see that just going to the information, the technical information, I have seen the program that controls this field. I have seen the table that controls this field. I have seen the field name itself. Yeah. And if you're sending this, if you want the technical guy to work on anything about this customer, this field, what he will be asking you for is not this information here you see in your invoice page. He's not going to ask you for customer name and all that. He's going to be asking you for this technical information. Yeah, and this is what controls these fields: the table, the field name, and the program. So if you come back to where we are, in the workbench, you have different kinds of programs. So let's say, for example, if I go to, we have I will give you three very, very important ones that you need to know. One is the data browser. Very, very important. I'll let you know what they are used for. Another, for functional guys, please, the technical guys can know more. But the functional guys, you need to know your data browser. You need to know your ABAP dictionary. You need to, if you're going to, design reports and all that, which I doubt, but it's very important you also know your ABAP editor. These are very important T codes for the functional guy. So let's say, for example, I go to the ABAP dictionary. You would see table, database table. Remember, I opened this invoice, yeah, and I'm seeing this table. If I copy this table and go here and paste it, let's see. So it has given me all the information about the data structure for that table. And of course, what the technical guys will be looking for are these technical information. You see, for company code, for example, the technical information they would need is this. For fiscal year, the technical information they will need is this. For clearing dates, the technical, so for every field you have in SAP, there is a technical component. And it's very, very important. So this is just trying to, so that's why the functional guy would need to understand how the structure. So this is a structure, and let's now look at the table. Let's say I want to, let me go to SE16, and which is like a data browser. This is a table name. Let me go back here. Let me just search for this. So let me go to, okay, I can also search this table so I will see the fields. I will also look for program name when the time comes. So I can just do this. Okay. Sorry, I need to do. This will be, let's just check. Let me go to SE16N. This is a little bit old. So just put N. Let me go to the general table. Okay. So it has already picked this as my last information. We talked about, so this has actually, mapped it out. We talked about the AC Docker. If I click on enter, for example, and I put a company name, which would be, we'll learn all this in detail. I'm just trying to, because we'll soon leave, I just want to make sure you get, that insight. So I have put a table name. I want to see all the transactions that have been posted for this particular company code. So you can see that I have put this table called SC Docker. I have indicated the company code. Then the system has been able to pull out all the transactions, their document numbers, the posting item, and everything about this guy. If I go back, for example, you can see the technical name for this grammar. So for this grammar called company code, what the technical guy understands is this in the universal table. If I put another table now, for example, let me put the table that we used. You see this company code. Let's see, let's put this table name here. Okay. Why is it not coming up here? Okay, this can only be run. Okay. Okay, this can only be run using my data dictionary. So the essence of, so why did I introduce this field? Now, if you want to read into any of these fields, every transaction here, this amount, posting date, all these guys would collect information from you. So if I put a customer name, for example, here, just know that this information I'm putting here, when I post, this information is going to go and sit at the field level. Yeah. So if I go to, for example, a more updated data browser, and I go to AC Docker, for example, there are a lot of tables which we are going to see, a lot, and we can't actually cram them. You also have to make sure you pick the ones that and execute this, for example. Okay, so you can see that if I post a transaction, for example, that transaction comes to the table AC Docker to sit. If I double click on one of these transactions, I want to see most of the technical names. Sorry, let me just do this to see this. Okay, now you can see the technical names for these transactions. So document number, this is the technical name. Fiscal year, this is the technical name. Company code, this is so basically, if I'm going to be doing something like an FSD, I'm going to be using these technical names. I won't use these guys because the technical consultants, this is what they understand. They understand this. So if I want to do company code, I'm going to be using this as a functional consultant. I want to do an FSD, and I want to tell the technical consultant that the company code is not correct. It is this thing I'm going to be writing. That word, the company code, this is what it is for the technical consultant. So that word company code, he doesn't know it in English. What he knows is RUBUKRS. Yeah. So why am I just making this simple? I'm just trying to give you an idea of what it feels like working in a technical environment. Yeah. So one of the codes, like I've talked to you, is SE11N. SE11N is called the ABAP dictionary tool, yeah, and it's used to edit and process ABAP dictionary objects. One of the very important T codes that we'll be using as we go. We're going to have it. We're going to have show you these things real life. This is just the intro class. We have the ABAP editor, which of course you can see here the programs, which is not frequently used by the functional consultant. It's just basically for knowledge sake. You can use the ABAP editor to write and edit ABAP programs, class method, function modules, and the rest of them. But some of us will grow from being functional and start doing. If once you go to the level of a technical, an architect, you will most likely be doing some of these things. So we have the data browser, which can use to access table entries without the need for an ABAP program. So if you want to access any table, like we have seen, you can do that using the SE16 or SE16N, which is more of a newer version. Yeah, and let's look at some terminologies because we'll wrap up in, I think there's, let's go for a quick 5 minutes break. When we come back, we use the remaining 15 minutes to wrap up this session. So basically, when we come back, we're just going to see, what a table is, what are these fields, all these jargons and terminologies. Now, the essence of knowing these things is so that as a functional guy, you can confidently discuss with the technical team and give them the information they want in the language they understand. Right. So that's the essence. That's the crux of this class is to improve on your communication in SAP with the technical team, because they do not understand your functional transaction codes. What they understand are programs, tables, fields, and some other technical languages. So that is why you need to do this, because when you grow from being a consultant that just does configuration, and maybe you find yourself mostly in the go live phases of the project, or you find yourself mostly supporting, if you are going to be in project from the start, or you're going to be in project from the prepare phase or the explore phase, you will most likely not escape this knowledge. It will be required from you. And also, if you're going to be joining project teams or going for interviews, it's also important that you understand these basics, because a technical person, a functional person who has technical information and is interviewing you will most likely ask you information about your knowledge of fields, tables, and how to basically do some technical stuff, even if it means transport or FSD or troubleshooting and all that. You need the tables and fields to do most of what you will do outside just posting transactions. So thank you guys. We'll go for a brief 5 minutes break. Then when we are back, we're just going to wrap up the session. We'll just briefly look at the tables and the elements of the tables, and we'll take it up from there. And when we come back, we're now going to be doing, in our next session, we're now actually going to be doing actual stuff, right? So we're going to have sessions where we'll do actual transactions, then teach you based on what you can find on the system. So when you go back, you can troubleshoot these things yourself. So we'll have scenarios where, okay, we have a scenario where you're supposed to look at a table and a field, then we'll take you through those processes. So the essence for this class today is just to understand the architecture. And for me, it's the foundation of everything you're going to be doing in the technical environment. Yeah, so let's get the foundation right so that when we go into the system and start working, we can really understand what we are doing and how to find our way. Remember, we have lots of about 7 or 8 or 9 topics to deal on. Each of these topics will be taking us to the technical space. Yeah, so we'll look at that. So we're taking a 5 minutes break. Once we are done, we'll wrap up the session. And if you have any questions at that point, please, I'd like you to drop your question in the question box. Then we'll look at it. So thank you very much, guys. Let's go for a brief 5 minutes break and return to wrap up this session.
Thank you.
Okay.